Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome so much to another video. Thank you for joining me. It's a bit drizzly here today, but my name is Abbie on this drizzly day, and this is Spend More Time in the Wild. So we are all about inspiring and empowering individuals to get outside for the benefit of mental and physical health, whilst building meaningful connections with the natural world and with each other. So before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to two of our Patreons. We've got Steve Brownlee and Jason Postlethwaite. You guys are absolute legends. You are helping us so much with this project, with the mission of Spend More Time in the Wild, to change lives all around the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And a huge thank you as well to all of our other Patreons. So we've got over 50 Patreons now supporting the project, helping us to make change and inspire and empower, just as I've already run through. And if you would like to get involved with Spend More Time in the Wild, whether that is coming on one of our walks, whether that's joining our Patreon community and our online community and the conversation going on there, all about personal growth and mindfulness, not just about getting outside, all the different aspects of that. If you'd also like to support the project by following on social media, sharing the stuff that we're doing, and of course just watching this video, then just head on to the link below, support the project. You'll be able to find out more there. So without further ado, let's get on with today's session, and we are going to be talking about planning a walk, how to plan a walk. So I appreciate for a lot of you guys, you're probably hardcore ramblers, you're out there doing stuff, you know how to read a map, it's all happy days. But what I love about this project is we have such a wide breadth and depth of individuals and people following this project, and people who are joining us and they're really keen to get outside but they're not really sure how to. And what I want to do is start to put together more stuff, we like stuff, to basically break down the intimidation of getting outside into practical, actionable steps. Like, how can we make that possible? And I think the best place to start, or one of the best places to start, is how to plan a walk. So I'm just going to put it out there. We're not going to be looking at how to read a map today. We're not going to be looking at bearings or pacings or timings or anything like that. Compasses are out of the picture. Basically, if you just sat at home, how can you plan a walk using a map and your brain and some other stuff? So the basic ingredients for today's recipe are you're going to need a map, and I've got different maps, so we'll talk about those as we go. You're going to need a pen, or if your personal flavouring taste is a pencil, then that's fine as well. Pen, pencil, whichever you prefer. I quite like a pencil actually in my life. You might want a piece of string, and we'll get to why you need a piece of string in a minute. And you also might want a notebook or just a piece of paper to make some notes about the things that we're going to be doing with planning our walk, or sort of your ideas and what you're looking for a walk. We'll come to all of that in a minute. So let's start with step one. So I'm going to try and break these down into steps. We'll see how it goes. If you followed any of my videos, you know my brain is quite scatty, but we'll make it work as best as possible. So let's start with maps. Maps. I think most of us know what a map is, and that's good. You know, even if we've just used a map to get around a city, or even, hey, Google Maps, that's also a map. There is such an immense variation of different maps out there in the world. And I say the world because the UK, we have two sort of main types. So we have OS maps. So you might have seen these. They've sort of got orange covers, can also have red covers as well. Oh, it's a bit windy. So OS maps, so that's basically these guys. These can come in sort of paper forms or laminated forms, so they're a bit more protected from drizzly days like today. I am actually getting wet, but it's fine, it's the outside. So OS maps. You might have also seen Harvey maps. So this is a Lake District Harvey map, but then, yeah, hang on, let me just talk about this. So Harvey maps are slightly different in a sense that obviously they're sort of brands, so they have their own way of depicting the landscape. People say different maps are good for different things, like OS maps are good for walking. Some people say Harvey's maps are good if you want to go climbing and you're looking for nice craggy areas, because the different maps sort of highlight, as I say, different things on the ground. But essentially a map, basic form of a map, is obviously a 2D layout, interpretation of the landscape around us, so we can look at a map in order to understand where we are in relation to the landscape that we stand in. So I've talked about OS maps here, I've talked about Harvey's maps. Now there's also loads of other different ways that these maps can be put together. So we've got here, this is an A to Z map book. We like a book. So this is particular ones from the coast to coast, and you can see inside here is literally just the OS map, but it's been cut up into sections so that you can follow the trail, because it's a linear route. The coast to coast goes across the country, and that just makes it a little bit easier rather than having to carry like 5-10 of these, because they get heavy and bulky. Other variations you've got are, this is Harvey's map, so I'm just sort of jumping around a little bit just to give you a bit of a taste, but we're going to focus on OS maps in particular today. So Harvey's maps, so these guys are for the Pennine Way and for the Great Glen Way. So again, it's sort of a linear route. They've taken their format and they put it into a sheet, so you can just carry this rather than having to carry loads of these. You can just follow your route, nice and simple. So that's those. Other forms of books you can get. So this is a Cicerone guide for the Sky Trail. And again, basically what they've done is taken, you can see, here we go, little stretches of the OS map and just plotted it along so you can sort of follow the route nice and steady. Obviously with this, you don't have that surrounding landscape. So if you wanted to come off the trail, it might be a little bit difficult. So you might want to complement that with another map. And then again, national trails, just as the, actually coast to coast isn't even a national trail. No other national trails on this table, that's a bit sad. So anyway, this is the national trails guide. So again, big thick guidebook, lots of OS maps in here, just helping you to navigate. So you can see maps come in all different forms. I've also got here, what do they call this one? The rucksack something, isn't it? Oh, yellow publication. So this is for the Coleridge Way. If I get it out of its sleeve, you can see again, linear map, but look how big, it's upside down. Look how big that scale is. We'll look at the OS map. You'll see how big this scale is. So scale, there's a word I haven't used yet. So maps come in different scales. So basically, for example, this map here is a 1 to 16. So essentially, the smaller the number, the 1 to something, the bigger the interpretation is going to be on the map. So that's a 1 to 16, super zoomed in. If we then compare that to this, which is probably a 1 to 50. Yeah, oh, it's a 1 to 25. So a 1 to 25 map, the OS map. You can see not quite as much detail, not quite as zoomed in. So it's a little bit different there. And then we've got a 1 to 40 Harvey's map here. What's this one here? National Trails. That one doesn't want to tell me. I expect that's a 1 to 40 as well, to be honest. But they come in different, there you go, 1 to 25, but you can get 1 to 50, you can get 1 to 100, so obviously that's super wide out. And again, they're all just different, well, they're the same interpretation of the land, but like less zoomed in, more zoomed in. So it's nice to have sort of a variety, especially if you're doing a long distance trek. You can see the real influence of the landscape that you're going to be walking through much better with a big map, so a big scale map, so 1 to 100 for example, or you can have a more zoomed in map, so 1 to 25, so you can really see those twists and turns in the landscape. You can calculate your distance a little bit more accurately. They can be good for looking at river crossings. They can show you a little bit more detail in the contours. So there's different variations of maps, so I strongly encourage you, I don't know, head to your local Cotswold Outdoors or even your local library. It's good to keep the libraries going, or just of course online if you're not able to get outside very easily, and just have a look through different maps. There's Walk Highlands, which you've got, you can create a free account. No association with Walk Highlands at all, other than the fact that I use their website and I think it's great. And you can go onto their GPS function, which I think is on the top right hand side when you're looking at the screen of their website, and essentially it's OS maps. So when you create that account, you can access the OS maps, you can zoom in, you can see what that looks like on different scales, and you can plot walks on there. We're also going to be talking at the end of the session about OS maps and their online mapping system. So again, you can plot walks on your computer and then print it out, so you don't have to buy all these maps, although I quite like having them. I mean, look how worn out they get. I mean, this has had so many adventures. So that's just some basic overview with the maps. So let's get one opened up and we will explore the different ways that we can use that map in order to plan a walk. Okie dokie, so I have decided to start with my Quantox Hill maps. This is an OS map. So this is what most of you guys will probably be familiar with. This isn't necessarily a mountainous terrain. We're looking at the Quantox, as I just said, which is an AONB, so an area of outstanding natural beauty. So we're not going to be covering what's a national park, what's the difference between that, between an AONB or an SSI, triple SI, all the different things, local nature reserve. We can do that in a different video. We've just got a map, let's plan a walk with it. So I'm going to open it up. As you can see, it's very well used. So that's the sleeve. On the sleeves as well, OS maps are quite cool because they're broken down. Basically, the whole country is mapped. It's immense. And they update these every so often. But essentially, whole country is broken down into grids, and you can buy the grid for the area that you want to go. So, for example, Quantock Hills is 140, map for 140. So that's really, really good. So we'll just get that out of the way. Obviously, it's broken because I've used it so much. And let's open up the map. Oh, it's a good feeling opening up a map. Here we go. Look at this. So, perfect. That's exactly where I wanted to open it, actually. That doesn't happen very often. It's nice when it's not a windy day. We have a map. So, you can see at the top of the map here, we have a key, or a legend, if you want to call it by its official name. And essentially what this is, you guys might have seen this when you did geography at school, or, you know, some D&V thing. But essentially, it's a key. So it's telling you what everything is on the map, so you can identify it. And what we're going to be looking at today is these guys. Where are they? Here we go. These guys. So we have got basically public rights of way. So you can see the sort of small dashed green line is a footpath. You can see the slightly bigger dashed green line is a bridle way. Then you can see we've got a byway open to all traffic. And then we've got a restricted byway. And basically these are the hierarchies of different like rights of way access points that we have into the countryside. Now I'm kind of talking specifically about England and Wales here. Scotland has a slightly different rule in a sense. It's got its right to roam act, so you have basically freedom to go wherever you want, bar a few places. So we're talking about England and Wales. Of course, the mapping system is still very similar for Scotland, so there is relevance here, but just be aware, in England we've got a bit more restriction as to where we can go, so we're just going to focus on these rights of ways, specifically even footpaths and bridleways. So footpaths, basically people on foot, whether you're walking to go to a climbing place, or whether you're just out for a ramble with your dog, whether you're trail running. Then if you want a bridleway, that's when you can start to take your bikes, your just basically wheeled stuff that's not motorized, and it sort of progresses up from there. Restricted byways are sort of, you know, small motorized vehicles, and so on and so on. Obviously this isn't an in-depth discussion about that, so let's find somewhere on the map. So you need to start to think about, basically, you've got your map, which is great. Where do you want to start your walk? Starting is a good place to start. Knowing where you want to start is a good place to start. So for some people, that might be, I want to walk out my front door, and that's where I want to do my walk, because maybe I don't have access to a car, or maybe I haven't got very long, so I just want to do a short walk local to me and experience my local landscape. Maybe you might want to start and finish at a bus station or a train station, so you're utilising public transport, so it's a little bit more environmentally friendly, or of course maybe just a car park or a pub or a cafe. That's always a good place to end up as well. So doing this upside down, this is going to be interesting. So let's see. So if you're looking for a car park, let's start at a car park. So you can see, quite obvious, most of us will recognise it from being on the road. It's a big P, a white P with a blue background. So I've got one right here by Broomfield, and you can see actually this is a National Trust place, which is interesting. I've never been here before, so this is new. Quantock Hills is actually up over here, and actually I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. Let's start with the very, very basics of a map. So as I say, we're not going to be looking at all the different things in the map, how to read it, how to necessarily navigate using a map in detail, but we're just going to start with, the map is pointing up, okay? So the top of the map is north, and the bottom of the map is south. That might sound ridiculously obvious, but even without a compass, in a way, then if you can read this map, you can orientate yourself, okay? So up is north, down is south. We're starting here by Broomfield at this National Trust place, okay? So we've got a starting point, awesome. Now let's have a think, and this is where the notepad can come in handy, okay? Because you basically, I mean, you can do this without the map. You can be like, I want to go for a walk. What do I want to see on a walk? So, of course, different landscapes present different wildlife opportunities, different sights and sounds and experiences when you're immersing yourself in nature. You need to think about, how far do you want to walk? What's the time limits that you've got? What's your fitness like? Just basically a general overview, sort of in your mind or on paper if it's helpful to get it out. What do you want out of this walk? Okay, so right now I'm going to say, okay, I want to go for a walk in Somerset. I want to explore a new area. This is a new area for me. I want to travel through some different landscapes. You know, try and stick on good footpaths as well. Maybe just utilise some small roads. We'll have a chat about that in a minute. But basically, I don't really want to go for that long a walk because I want to take my little doggies, and they're getting on a bit now, so they can't walk too far. But just a nice walk that I can take friends on, family on, that you can do in an afternoon. So the average walking speed is about 5 kilometers an hour. So that's about 1.3, 1.2 miles per hour. So factoring that in when it comes to measuring our distance, and we'll do that once we've plotted that route. These are all different things to think about, and I know this is sort of coming out in a sporadic nature, but it all sort of complements each other. It's all really important stuff to be thinking about. So we have our starting point. Beep, beep. Oh no, we haven't driven there yet. We're just planning, but beep, beep. Anyway, because that's quite fun to say that. So let's have a look here. So we can see straight away, we've got a few sort of minor roads around us. These are the yellow lines here. So those are like little country roads. You know, they might be busy because everyone's busy these days. I mean, it's England, what do we expect? But they also might be nice and quiet, which is quite nice, especially on a Sunday morning, I tend to find. So we've got some nice quiet roads. We can utilise those, no problem at all. Usually walking towards oncoming traffic, unless it's a corner, it's probably safer just to cross over so you can be seen. There's a little thing there. And then we can also see we've got this sort of we've got this green line, which we've looked at is a footpath, and then, it's got some diamonds on it. What do diamonds mean? So diamonds tend to mean a designated long distance footpath. So obviously, if you follow my channel for any length of time, you know that's generally what I tend to spend my time doing in the year, long distance footpaths. And if we follow this along just a little bit further, we can see, here we go, it's labelled the Macmillan Way. So that's a big old long distance footpath here in the southwest. I think it's like 600 and odd miles maybe, it's quite long. So obviously we don't want to walk all of that in one day, but we can still utilise that. There's no restrictions there. So, okay, so we're at the car park, and I can see already, you can see this is actually quite undulating landscape. So the sort of browny orange lines you can see, these are contour lines. And again, we're not going to be looking at necessarily how to read the contour lines, but they basically symbolize the topography, the undulation of the landscape that we're going to be walking through. So they are something to bear in mind, especially if we're looking at building our fitness and increasing our stamina. And of course, if you're climbing, for every 100 meters, you tend to add on about 10 minutes. So that's just a little rule there. That's the Naismith's rule. Naismith's rule. I find that really hard. Naismith's rule is a really hard thing to say. But it's just something to bear in mind as well. So we've got a few undulations going on here, but let's just have a look at the landscape and let's just see if we can make a little route. I don't know, let's see, roughly 4 miles sounds good for me today. So we've got our car park, I keep coming back to that. And quite interestingly, you can see already, we've actually got a church here. So you can see that square, that black square with the cross on top. So that's a square-spired church. So if it's a circle, then it's a circular spired church, which is quite cool. Usually I reckon that's probably about 13th century, as many of them are around here, so it's quite nice to sort of look at that if you're into your history, and of course that can connect you with the local area. A lot of them have you know, leaflets about the sort of history and the growth and the of the economy and the culture around that landscape. So cool, we've got a church, that's exciting. And of course we've got that National Trust place, so we could just wander around there if we want to, that's fine. But basically I'm going to head north, south, east. This is upside down, so this is a bit difficult. East. That is east. Yes, it is east. So I'm going to head east. I'm going to pick up this nice, big, obvious path. National trails or long-distance footpaths are usually quite obvious. And so we're just going to follow this little minor road for a little bit. Then we're going to go past a farm, and then boom, we're in some woodlands. And this is really exciting because I like trees. Trees are good for me. Good therapy time in trees. So here we go. So we're in the trees, which looks really nice. You can see there's a little spring. You might be able to spot that trickling down. That'd be quite nice. And you can also see from the colour of the trees here and the actual depiction of the fluffy plants that they've sort of put on there. These are deciduous trees, so these are native trees. And if I move a little bit further south, you can see your sort of classic pine tree image. So this is probably a plantation. It's most likely managed by the Woodland Trust, or actually, sorry, the Forestry Commission is what I meant to say then. It's probably this bit further north, actually. The deciduous is probably the Woodland Trust. Or maybe still National Trust, who knows. But yeah, so you can see the different types of woodland there. So again, that can be a nice indicator if you're not quite familiar with the contours and how to read those. Okay, I can see south of me is some pine trees and north of me are some deciduous trees, so native trees. They could be oak and beech and ash and hazel and willow and all those different things. Obviously this time of year it's a little bit more difficult to tell, but a pine tree is still a pine tree. So you could sort of just keep that for reference when you're walking along. So here we go. That was that archers thing again. I really don't listen to the archers. I don't know why I keep doing it. Actually, I know why I do it. When I did archaeology at A-level, my archaeology teacher used to do it all the time. She was an absolute legend. I love her to bits. But blame her. Okay, and we can see, I'm going to go, the path splits here. So we can basically sort of go southeast or northeast. So I'm going to sort of take this path again, sticking on the Macmillan Way. And we got a pond. Yay! You might find some ducks, some wildfowl, maybe some swans scooting about on the water. That's all very exciting. And then boom, we're on another minor road. So if we want, we can literally circle back via that minor road. Okay, nice and simple. We can see we've got obviously some undulations, so we might get a good climb in there if we head up to the top of this hill. And the spot height of this hill, so the spot height is essentially where you find the trig, not always actually, quite often where you find a trig point. So we're all familiar with those clunky old sort of concrete blocks that you find on top of hills. So that essentially they normally mark the high point, and that's usually the spot height. So you can see the spot height of this hill is 228 meters above sea level. So all of these points are in meters above sea level, and we've obviously got a big old climb to get there. So I'm not quite ready to end my walk yet, so I'm going to continue along the Macmillan Way, so just dropping down and then continuing along through this valley. You can see there's lots of contours here. It's going to be quite steep, potentially quite flooded, but we're going to come to hazards later. But I'm on a road, so that's all right. We're just going to keep plodding on the road, and then we're going to come off the road, still following the Macmillan Way, and I'm just going to skirt around all the way to, oh, there's some nice woods there as well. Oh mate, we could keep going all day. 4 miles, Abbie, behave. Not got time, you have to get to work. So I'm going to join Rook's, what's that called? Rook's Castle Farm. That's quite a nice name, isn't it? Rook's Castle Farm. So we're here. Okay, so we're back on another minor road, and essentially if I want to, I can literally skirt all the way back round via this road. I can follow that nice country road. I reckon that's probably about 3.5, 4 miles, to be honest. We can have a look at that in a minute. We'll measure it. But what I want to do is, obviously this isn't a mountainous area, we're not even on the coast, but let's just talk about some things we need to be considering. So say that is the route I want to do. It's super simple. We've got a nice bit of footpath and we've got some road to sort of make up some speedy walking. We've got some nice undulations to get our heart rate up. We've got a different variety of landscapes. We've got some history in there as well with the churches and the National Trust place. I wonder if there's anything else. We've got a disused quarry as well over here we might be going past. Of course, we've got the ponds so we can look at the different animal species going on. Doesn't appear to be any tumuli. So tumuli are burial mounds, usually dating to the Bronze Age. Doesn't appear to be any of that around. So we're missing out on that. You can find them on top of the Quantock Hills itself. Usually they are on the high point of a landscape. And actually, to be honest, just zooming out a little bit here, I've just spotted there's a sort of a peachy coloured patch here, and that tends to mean sort of open access land. So open access here in the UK means you can pretty much just wander wherever you want. Obviously don't go through privately marked gates and things. But you can see on top of here there's actually a blue triangle. That's where you're going to get one of those trig points. So those, as I just mentioned, those weird concrete blocks that seem to be everywhere. People protested so much about them going up, but now it's like, no, we love our trig points. It's quite funny. So actually you could come along this road and then you could go up onto this common and you could just walk up to that trig point, which you can see is 290 meters above sea level. So that would be our high point, probably looking down over the forest and where we parked our car, and then we could drop back down. That would be quite rewarding, just to make that a little bit further. And it's nice to sort of get onto some common ground as well. And you can see there's actually a lot of different footpaths there, but there's also still designated footpaths. Now, it is worth me saying that, especially in populated areas, so somewhere like the Quantock Hills, yes, there's lots of paths marked on the map, but not all of them relay on the ground. Now, it's not going to sound super encouraging, but if there's a heavy footfall, a lot of the times people will cut corners, or new footpaths will be created quite quickly. You might also find yourself on some sheep paths or some cattle trods, and essentially just making sure you keep referencing that map as best as you can. If you really do want to get onto that navigation, really, you know, up those skills, you can consider taking a navigation course. So Mountain Training do different navigation courses. Then you've also got the National Navigation Award Scheme. They've got bronze, silver and gold. You could probably just do a bronze course and you'd cover everything we need for what we're doing today. So that's just a little side point. So zooming back in, let's go to the car park, let's walk around this route, and let's just have a think about the different hazards that we might possibly encounter when we're on the walk. Right, so we're at the car park. Probably what's quite likely is we've got a National Trust place here, so we've probably got access to some toilets, maybe. I don't know if Fife Court is actually a building place or not. Some National Trust places are just property, just landscape, sorry. Usually where there's property involved, there's a toilet. So that might be helpful for some of us. And otherwise, there's wild wheeze all the way. So, okay, toilets, something you want to think about. Personal, medication, things like that. You know, how is a walk going to suit you and how your body is functioning depending on, you know, what you're experiencing at the moment. Really important just to think about that. So might be a toilet there, otherwise wild wheeze it is. Okay, so let's have a look. Different hazards. So actually, I'm just going to zoom out. So before we hit the walk, because obviously we're not on the walk now, this is all still hypothetical, we're still planning our walk. We need to think about the weather. Weather always comes up. I mean, we're England, we're Scotland, we're Wales. The weather is our conversation. So weather. So weather can mean basically what are the conditions around you that are going on, or could potentially be going on. So is it going to be cold and wet? Is it going to be snowy? Is it going to be hot and sunny? Now, of course, it's being prepared for these things, and so in terms of equipment, and if you're interested in what to pack for a day walk, you can check out this video up here right now. So I run through all the different stuff there. But just keeping it nice and simple, we'll come to equipment again in a minute. The weather. How is the weather going to influence what's going on the ground? So we can see we've got some rivers, we've got some water about here. If it's been a wet winter, say, I mean, it's mid-February now, if I go on this walk, it's very, very likely it's going to be very muddy and probably quite slippy, possibly even very flooded, because we've had a lot of flooding around here. And you can see we've also got some valleys, the river usually in a valley, and it is in a valley, so that's potentially going to be flooded. So these are the potential hazards that we just need to be prepared of, potentially having backup routes, like what can we do if it is flooded? Just being aware of these different things. How can the weather influence the landscape and of course influence our experience? So if we did sort of circle around and then come up this hill and go up to that trig point, that's going to be exposed. You can see there's no tree cover there, so if the weather does turn, if it is windy and wet, it's going to be exposed. You can have wind chill. The higher up you go, the colder it's going to get, the more exposed to the wind you're going to get. If you're getting cold and wet, then you can potentially put yourself at risk of hypothermia, so that's where it's important to make sure you've got the right equipment to look after yourself. And again, check out that video if you want to know about sort of layering and understanding the different first aid stuff that you should be taking. It's being prepared for different eventualities that might potentially arise, okay? So also with the weather, of course, the time of year influences, well, time of year is not quite weather, but let's talk about daylight now. So different times of year, obviously throughout winter, we have much less daylight here, but in the summer, I mean, you can get almost 14, 15 hours of daylight, possibly more in some places. So just being aware, have you got the daylight when you start that walk to complete this route in light in the day, or is it going to get dark? It's usually worth having a head torch on you anyway, but that's just something to bear in mind. So thinking about the daylight, the amount of time you've got to do that walk, can you do that with your current fitness level, and you know, not completely beat yourself up doing it super fast? I don't know, maybe you're a trail runner, go for it. So just again, something else to consider. Sorry, everything is blowing away here. So with the fact that this is an undulating route, it's not flat. We talked about it could be slippy, so of course working down slopes or even up slopes when they're muddy and slippy can be quite dangerous, so just being aware of that. We might need some walking poles, or again being able to understand how to move up a slope nice and safely, sort of diagonally. And of course this is a low-lying stretch of land, let's be honest. You start to head into mountainous regions, even if you're not climbing the mountains, come winter you should be prepared for winter conditions, i.e. potentially ice axe and crampons, nice insulating layers, potential warm drink, all the different things. Again, if you want to learn how to hike in winter, check out this video. But over 300 meters usually is, I mean, if it's a proper winter, that's where you potentially might encounter ice and snow and proper difficult conditions. But this is low level, okay? So where you are on your walk, potentially if you're on the coast, you know, it's going to be exposed, unless you're walking through some really nice forested areas. But again, it could be steep, it could be slippy. If it's windy, could you get blown off a cliff? All things you need to think about. It's essentially common sense, almost as if you're doing a risk assessment for your walk, for yourself. If you're taking a friend, really nice to do a risk assessment sort of in your mind, or just writing some stuff down to make sure everybody can stay safe. We talked briefly about sort of other routes, so having an emergency exit or, you know, alternative routes can be really helpful, especially when you are going higher up. So if the weather does change, or, you know, if something happens, you can get down off that hill, you can get to help a little bit quicker. So here I can see there's lots of different roads I could take down. I've also got some open access land that I could run through if I really wanted to, but there's lots of different ways I could get back to that car park. Which is quite nice. Even hitch a lift on that little quiet road. So different things to consider there. So roads, there we go. Roads are another hazard. So we're using a nice little B road or a C road. They're the really quiet country roads that we get around here. You can also walk on A roads, and A roads are the sort of bigger, actually the B roads are the orange, sorry, and then the A roads are the red. They're going to be busy roads. Kind of avoid those if you can. But basically you can in theory walk on them. I wouldn't encourage it. The only place you can't really walk in terms of roads is on a motorway. You can't even cross them. You have to cross over a designated sort of pedestrian crossing, which is obviously a bridge or a tunnel even. So just making sure you're abiding by the law and not getting arrested on a motorway and risking your life. That's not ideal. So obviously roads are going to be a hazard if you're crossing railway tracks. A lot of them have, especially if it is a public right of way, there will be like level crossings. Not all of them have got the sort of barriers. Usually they're just near the roads, not the people stuff. So making sure you stop, look, listen. There we go, I learnt as a child. So just being nice and safe and aware on roads and railways of hazards there. And now, as I say, I'm jumping around a lot with this, but I've talked about mud, but what else could you find on the ground? So we can see here, this is actually quite a placid sort of piece of countryside. But again, you hit the mountains, you're potentially going to have scree, you're potentially going to have boulder fields and rocks and rubble to work around. Going up and down, you know, especially if it's steep terrain, that could be pretty dangerous. You need to know how to walk in that landscape. On the coast, you might have sand or pebbles to be walking across, but then you've got tides to bear in mind. So checking the tide timetable is really important, because you don't want to get stranded, don't want to get cut off. We don't want to have to call out the Coast Guard, because that's all very sad times. So then basically that's just a brief overview of all the different things, or just many of the different things that you could potentially encounter on the walks. Of course, livestock as well. Many people don't like cows. I love cows. I don't eat them. I love cows. But you know, we've got some fields that we're potentially going to be going around here. It may potentially be livestock in those. Can we be prepared to deal with those? How do we sort of reduce aggression, shall we say, and look after ourselves, keep our mental and physical health nice and safe. So there we go. I'm going on about all different things, loads of different hazards that you sort of just should be aware of when you're planning that walk. Your experience level, your understanding of the landscape will help you to interpret that. Of course, working with somebody to look at a map as well can be really helpful. But just sitting down and taking time to study a map can really help you understand basically how they work and what that's going to look like on the ground. Okay, obviously there's not like cows drawn on here, and it's not like a Harry Potter map where it's constantly changing. That would be amazing, but it's not, unfortunately. So we're not even out of the house yet. This is great. We're not even planning this walk. I like this kind of walking. There's no energy involved. But I mentioned briefly about packing. So okay, so the next step, we've got our walk sorted out. We know where we're going to go. We don't know how long it's going to be. Hang on a minute. Let's rewind. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is where our piece of string comes in handy. Yay! So you could use a ruler here, but I quite like string because how long is a piece of string? Nobody knows. So essentially, super simple, okay? Now bear in mind, there is always going to be variations. This is not going to be 100% accurate. It's probably going to be, I don't know, 60%, 70% accurate with a piece of string. If you're doing it online, we'll come to that, then it's going to be a little bit more accurate, but the map is never going to display the exact little twists and turns on the trail, because this is a 1 to 25. A 1 to 16, as we've looked at, might have a little bit more detail, but take it sort of not as a pinch of salt, that's a bit extreme, but just be aware of that, okay? So end of the string, we're going to place that at our car park, and then essentially all we're going to do is just very carefully follow the piece of string along our walk, and we're just going to keep moving along our piece of string. So we've got a piece now trailing behind, and that shows the distance that we've traveled or accumulated so far on our walk. And as you can see, on tight corners and things, it's not hugely accurate. It just gives you a nice overview of the length of a trail, but I do like using a piece of string. Beats a computer any day. Oh, all my stuff is blowing away. Hang on 1 second. Ugh. There we go. Okay, so we're at the farm. This is good. And we're going to go a tight U-turn. This is not very easy with cold fingers. But you can see why you want to do this in the warmth of your house with a nice cup of tea. So we're going back along the road now. We're up on that high point here on this nice hill, still on the road. And I am going to go up to this trig point. So I'm going to continue along. And then boom, there's a trig point. And now we're going to circle back round via this little road, past a plantation, through the nice open landscape, and then back to the car. So this is how long my walk is. Now we're going to go to the bottom of the map. Sometimes they're on the side of the maps, depends on the map. And we can see here, this is our sort of measuring stick, as it were. So I can take this piece of string now. You could cut it here or tie a knot or something. I'm just going to keep it pinched for now. And you can see you've got distances in kilometers and miles. This is how you can literally measure how far your walk is. So let's have a look. I'm going to put the end of it on 0. I'm going to work in miles because I usually do stuff in miles. And I'm working along. Okay, so there's 3 miles. It goes up to 3 miles. So then I'm going to have to go back down, coming back to 3 miles. Okay, I completely underestimated. Oh no, I added on more with that walk, didn't I? So basically this walk is about 6.5 miles. So it goes up to the 3 again, and there's a little bit afterwards. And if I was going to add on, say, another 1/4 mile just for twists and turns and inaccuracies in my measuring skills, it's about 6.5 miles. So, you know, if you're walking at say 3 miles an hour, of course you could do that walk in 2 hours, but that doesn't factor in any styles, any hazards that you might have to encounter, like working around floods, you know, even walking up and down the undulations of the hills that we've got on this walk as well. So factoring that in, you could probably say you should probably allow about 3 hours for that if you are walking at 3 miles an hour. It's all the better if you finish sooner than that, taking photos and things. Everything takes time, so just adding in a little bit extra, maybe just 2.5 hours for 6.5 miles there. So that's essentially that. So we know we've got our walk, we've got the distance, we know where we want to go, we know when we're going to go, we sort of check the weather, we know it's going to be okay. Let's pack our bags. So essentially super quick run through. As I say, you can watch the videos on what to pack for your day hike, but basically you need your nice warm layers, your different layering system. So you've got your base layer, ideally a wicking layer, not cotton. Cotton is going to stick to your body if you get cold, or if you sweat, or if it rains, and then potentially put you at risk of hypothermia. Also chafing, no one likes chafing anywhere. So a wicking layer, which means it carries away your moisture, helps your body to breathe. Then a sort of insulating layer. This is not insulating, hence why I'm feeling quite cold right now. Usually a couple of insulating layers can be quite good. Then you've got your shell layers, so your waterproofs, just to keep you dry, obviously, potentially some extremity protection, so some gloves, a nice hat, getting some nice nice trousers, potentially waterproof trousers as well, and then walking boots. A lot of people going for trail shoes these days don't quite have the ankle support, up to you, but nice comfortable walking boots and good walking socks. Of course, if you're walking in the summer, you know, you might want to go in shorts and a t-shirt, but it's still always worth packing extra layers just in case. Even if you don't have even if you don't get cold, you might find somebody who's had an injury, they need to be still whilst you wait for the emergency services. Having some layers to put on them can be really helpful. So injuries, carrying a first aid kit, super important. Making sure you know how to use the stuff in your first aid kit. So you know, you might want to take an outdoor first aid course. Can be pretty cool courses to do, really educational and insightful anyway. But anyone spending time outside, I really recommend they take an outdoor first aid course. Other things, you know, you might want your walking sticks. You might obviously map. Leaving your emergency contacts with someone, so that's not something you necessarily need, but leaving it with somebody. What else? Food, water, sunglasses. All sorts of different things. As I say, I don't want to run through the full packing list. You can see that in the video above. Whistle if you need help, all sorts of different stuff. But basically, you'll get more and more familiar with what you need to take the more and more time you spend outside, which is great. Basically, the more experience you can get, the more experienced you get, the more comfortable you get outside. But never take it for granted. Always respect the outside, because the unknown can always happen to even the most experienced of people. Okay, so cool, we basically have a plan now. This is exciting. So we have a walk, we know when we're gonna go, we know where we want to start, where we want to finish, we know how long it is, roughly how long it's gonna take. We know what we're gonna take because we've packed it and it's by the door ready to go. We've got the dog's lead on. Now what? Well, let's just do one final weather check. Let's step out the door, let's lock the door, and let's go on an adventure. And that is it, guys. That is basically how you plan a walk. Now, as I say, I've done this for a low-level walk because I really want to encourage you to start simple. Obviously, it's super exciting to head to the mountains, to head to, you know, quite remote regions, even the Lake District, you know, but the more remote and further away from roads and stuff that you go, the more... the further away from help you are, you know. And if you really are just trying to tread carefully and build your experience, I just want to encourage you to start simple. Don't put pressure on yourself. Every adventure is an adventure. Every walk is a walk. There's so much to see. And you know, often you start to go onto these bigger paths in populated areas and there's loads of people. So I reckon I could do this walk this time of year and probably not see anybody. I mean, there's no major settlements around here at all, which looks ace. So I might go do that actually someday. Maybe in a couple of weeks, head out, take a day off. That'd be quite good. So that's how you plan a walk. So we've looked at basically what we want out of the walk, whether we want viewpoints, or archaeology, or history, or nice nature places, you know, high points, all sorts of different stuff. We've looked at sort of the different things on a map very briefly there, just how to orientate that map as well, distancing, timings, with regards to how long it takes to do a walk, everything I just talked about. There's no point in me recapping it because I've just done that. I've just found this really good fun actually. It's so nice just to spend some time sitting looking at a map. So on your next rainy day, and it's actually starting to rain properly now, why not make yourself a brew or a cup of coffee, or if you like me, sort of a milkshake with coffee in it. Then have a look at a map, spend some time, just give yourself some space. It can be really quite therapeutic as well, and just plan a walk. So guys, if you think there's anything that I've missed, and there's so much to cover here, and there's definitely is stuff, hello doggy, we have a friend, and there definitely is stuff that I've not covered, because as I say, I didn't want to go hugely in detail, then pop it in the comments below. But I wish you all the best. Let me know how your first walk goes. And once again, thank you so much for watching this video. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And until next time, guys, stay wild. I'll see you soon. Wait, I forgot. How did I forget? It's because I like paper maps. What about online maps? Let's have a chat about those. So I packed away all the paper maps. But let's just say we are sort of in our house. We don't have any paper maps. We want to go, I don't know, say I want to go to Snowdonia. No, I have a map on Snowdonia. Okay, say I want to go to... Okay, let's just take Snowdonia. Say I don't have a map on Snowdonia. This is where it can be good to head online. So I've already mentioned Walk Highlands, so have a look at that website. You can check out the GPS app thing there, and you can see basically the whole country for the OS maps. It's amazing. So just create an account now, have a look at that. It's all free, which is really good. So you can zoom in and you can basically plot your route on there. Again, you can, just as we did with a piece of string, but essentially you just click the distances and where you want to go from here to here to here to here, and create a circle or even a linear route. If you're doing a linear route, obviously you need to make sure you've got transport back to where you left the car or where you started. So yes, so we're plotting it online, so that can be really good to sort of check the distance. Then you can also export that as a GPS file, so you can put that onto an actual GPS if you wanted to. And then you can carry that and you can sort of check off the places as you go around, which is quite nice. You also might want to look at something, the OS maps online. So you have to sign up for that. There is a free version, but you can subscribe as well. And what's quite nice about that is you can actually then print the section of the map that you've marked, and I really like that because it does mean you don't have to buy an OS map. Obviously these are a bit more rugged than a piece of paper, but you can laminate that piece of paper, sort of protect it and keep it for adventures to come. So having a look at the OS map, online stuff as well. Essentially it's all exactly the same, but all we're doing is taking it onto the computer, and rather than sort of making notes on paper, we're making notes on the computer. Rather than plotting with a piece of string, we're plotting actually on the computer. Obviously everything is computerized. I definitely find it a lot more fun doing paper stuff. It's quite cathartic, if you want to use that word. So we've got OS maps, and you could also, if you wanted to look at stuff on your phone, you can get the OS map app. You can also get things like View Ranger. Again, you can subscribe to that. I think there's Komoot you can do similar stuff with as well. Look at the hiker apps. That's hiker with 2 eyes if you want to do a long distance trail or longer routes. All of these guys, apart from OS maps, well, in fact, even in OS maps obviously have their stereotypical, very familiar maps. Then often all the other different variations have got different types of maps, just like we've looked at the OS maps and the Harvey's maps. So I know that the View Ranger maps, you can access the OS maps on there, I think. I'm pretty sure you can. But they've also got their own variation of the map. So it's the View Ranger maps, and then Komoot has got the Komoot maps. Komoot's quite good for cycling, actually, as opposed to walking. But there's different variations, so it's definitely worth having a look at some of these things. Download some apps and just get familiar with how they work as well. Technology certainly has its place, but if I were you, I know a lot of people, more and more people are starting to rely on technology as their primary source of navigating and moving through the landscape, and I think that's kind of fine, but also make sure you have a backup of paper maps as well, just so that if you run out of battery, if there's no signal, something goes wrong, you've got your paper map and you can navigate out. Of course, we've not talked hugely about navigation, but it's just some stuff to bear in mind. So essentially there's just some different things you can look at online as well, just to get you started, perhaps whilst you're waiting for your paper map to come through the post. Of course, you can order your paper maps pretty much anywhere online, but it's quite nice to as well support sort of local companies, so your local bookstore or your local library, and just sort of supports the local economy as well. That can be quite a nice thing to do. So now I can wrap up this video. Sorry to forget that, guys. Super important, because I think it's, you know, it makes the outdoors a little bit more accessible. Online, internet's great, so utilize it. Good resources there. There's lots of communities as well. If you're on Facebook, you know, UK hiking Facebook group, of course, Spend More Time in the Wild, we've got a huge conversation going on. There's all sorts of different groups, probably groups in your area as well, walking groups, to connect with people, reach out, you know, build those relationships, build that connection with the landscape, with the people, and hopefully this will be the beginning of a whole new way of life, exploring the beautiful countryside that we have here, just, you know, in the UK and around the world. So I wish you all the best. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and until next time, stay wild. Love it.